In this video I want to tell a little bit about some Malifaux models that I tried recently and that I enjoyed quite a bit. And these models are the Gremlins. The Gremlins belong to the Outcast faction. They work synergistically very well. If you have some Gremlins, you will want to have more Gremlins. And well, let me show you what they can do. Here we have Ophelia, who is a henchman for the Gremlins. She is a very good shot. Her pistol can do a lot of damage when combined with the right triggers. She has the ability of getting some positive flips when trying to hit in exchange for negative flips. For those who do not know what that is, for negative modifiers when inflicting damage. So that's pretty good to go past the defenses of enemies that are particularly hard to hit. And also she has a couple of abilities that work well with other Gremlins. Most noticeably to me is the fact that she allows Gremlins to ignore the whoops trait. Yes, many Gremlins have the whoops trait, which means that when they are firing their weapons and when they miss, they will hit some of their friends within a 10-inch range. So if you want to enjoy some comedy, some slapstick comedy in particular, well, by all means, have your Gremlins shoot each other, but if you want to play effectively, you will probably want to have Ophelia in your crew of Gremlins. And somebody who makes Gremlins effective when firing is particularly important because that is pretty much what Gremlins do. They are not good in melee combat, they are range fighters. You will want to keep them at a distance. You will want to use defensive abilities when they're attacked in melee. They have ways of squealing. That squeal is one of the abilities that they have, allows them to move away from enemies. They are sneaky. they are good at firing at the enemy from a distance. This is really what you should do with them. As for melee combat, not so much. They do have some melee units though. One such unit is this guy here, Prelavage, who leads a sort of kamikaze pig loaded with fuel, and as you can see, he can use that fuel as a fire weapon. As a fire weapon meaning a weapon that produces fire but still hits a short range. Also, the guy goes kabooey. When killed, he deals damage to the area in which he is. He has explosions as weapons. What you're gonna do with him is to keep him on the sidelines for a while until you see a cluster of enemy models forming, until there is a number of enemies that are close to one another, and then you just throw the guy in there as a kamikaze unit to do his damage, to inflict as much damage as possible, which he can definitely do. Another crew of Gremlins, the crew that I showed you, is the crew that comes with Ophelia in the Ophelia starter box. Here we have another starter box, another crew including a starter box, and this one is the box of Som'er Teeth Jones, that leader there. He's not that much of a fighter. He doesn't really jump into the action, or maybe probably shouldn't. His abilities work well with that of the other Gremlins. He really is a leader, but he works better if he's not in the front line. If you keep him in an area where he can do his tricks, then he can do quite a number of things for you. For example, he can spawn new Gremlins, and that is pretty good. He can heal your Gremlins, and that is very useful too. He does all of these things that, again, improve the effectiveness of his Gremlins. The other Gremlins per se are not different, or not very different from the ones that I showed you earlier. They use fire weapons. They are better fire weapons than anything else. They are very clumsy. They have more comical miniatures, actually. Look at this guy who is looking down the barrel of his rifle, and you will know what I mean. And they have the whoopsie characteristic, so you really will want Ophelia around so that she can hold them in line. There is also a melee unit here, which is the War Pig, that can charge and deal a lot of damage. But again, generally speaking, this is a long-range crew, a long-range group, they work well at long range with some limited melee abilities. If you want to add some melee capability to your Gremlin crew, then you can also hire Lenny, who is sold separately. This is not part of the 2 sets that I showed you. Lenny can be summarized in the expression Lenny Smash. That's pretty much all he does, and he does that well. That's good enough. He's tough, he is resilient, and he hits hard, which may not be super exciting per se, but when you consider that the weakness of the Gremlins usually is precisely the fact that they are not very effective in melee combat, then having Lenny around can be an asset, even though clearly he's not one of the great thinkers of our era. So, the Gremlins in general are a pretty good group. What is great about them is they're very straightforward. They are very intuitive to play. They have less abilities than other models, than other factions. They're less tricky to use. Maybe Som'er Jones takes a little more practice, but if you were to start the game and you've never played Malifaux before, probably a crew of Gremlins centered around Ophelia in a situation where you do not have to get into melee too often, that is probably an ideal starting crew. Actually, I wish that I had known the Gremlins earlier when I was learning the game, because I think that they would really make the game easy to learn. To me, they're a perfect starting point to experience Malifaux. Even for experienced players, though, there are fun things that you can do with them. There are ways in which you can make them extremely irritating for your opponent. And I think that the miniatures, while they are small, they're less quote-unquote spectacular, yet they have their appeal. Again, they have their comedical quality. So overall, this is a group of miniatures that I like. Not a crew, because as a group it encompasses different crews and several models and many ways that you can combine those models. But as a general family, the Gremlins are one that I like.